On to another week of football. Welcome to week 4 of the 2025 NFL season. Last week we had a bit of a mixed bag where the games either sucked or were complete and utter chaos with no in-betweens. I managed through that chaos to somehow go 11-5 with my predictions, so let's see if we can keep the ball rolling here as we go into week 4. Today I'm going to give you a preview breakdown in my predictions for every single game, so let's just get right into this thing. Starting off on Thursday night, you got the Seattle Seahawks taking on the Cardinals in an NFC West divisional game. A bit of a curious case here, as I don't think either team has looked incredible this season, but they have been competitive throughout all their contests so far. It's a tough game to call. I mean, Arizona, they're the ones at home, but at the same time, they haven't been playing as good of teams as Seattle. They've had some really close matches in spite of that as well. I mean, the Saints game was only one possession. They almost blew a massive lead against Carolina. But Seattle at the same time, they haven't been putting up all that many points so far this season. Sam Darnold has looked okay. I mean, he looked good against the Saints, but that doesn't really mean all that much. They've been having a hard time scoring a ton of points, and that could go in the Cardinals' favor. It's a toss-up in this one, but ultimately, I decided to lean on the Seahawks to win this game. From the eye test perspective, Seattle feel like the slightly more consistent team. They haven't been scoring a lot, yeah, but their defense has been extremely reliable up until this point. They haven't been prone to giving up a lot of scores. They've contained every team they've played so far. They've been forcing turnovers in every match, interceptions galore. This Seahawks defense is legit. And you know that Kyler Murray can lay an egg every once in a while, and I don't feel like it totally happened in the San Fran game. That was just a tough competitive contest. I feel he's overdue to have one of those vintage Kyler chokes, and it's going to happen here against Seattle. A tough divisional foe that knows him very well, with a defense that's really flying high right now. I like the Seahawks to take advantage and do just enough to win this game. Seattle feel like that team that's going to squeeze out a lot of games, win or loss, and this is just going to be another example of it because the Cardinals are definitely not a bad team. Tough game here, but ultimately I feel the Seahawks are slightly more trustworthy. Moving on to Sunday, we start with a 9:30 affair, the Dublin game, when the Minnesota Vikings take on the Pittsburgh Steelers. The Vikings are going to be out on the road in a different country for 2 consecutive games, and this is going to be their first stop against Pittsburgh, and it's going to be a close matchup. Both teams have very stingy defenses, with offenses that can be pretty hit or miss. The Vikings are flying high after a major dominant victory over the Bengals. I mean, it was obvious that they had a chance to win, but to win the way they did was absolutely insane. They're forcing turnovers galore, and that could be a problem for the Steelers. And Rodgers, he's had a bit of a turnover problem. We saw it again against New England. And he doesn't have the best track record when it comes to these out-of-country matches. He did terrible with the Jets last year, actually against this Vikings team. We saw him lose to the Giants as well in 2022. Not the best track record for Rodgers in this situation. The Steelers are actually underdogs in this one. It feels like a bit of a trap, like Vegas almost wants you to pick the Steelers, and you know what? I'm going to fall for that trap. I think the Steelers are the better football team, and it's going to be a lot different for the Vikings now that they're not preparing for freaking Jake Browning. It's a lot different playing against Aaron Rodgers, even if he is a bit on the washed side at this point. The Steelers, they're a major step above. They have an excellent defense, and whether it's J.J. McCarthy or I'm assuming Carson Wentz, it will not matter. I'm expecting either quarterback to struggle against this Pittsburgh defense, which has finally come alive, and I think the Steelers are going to edge out a really close game here. The big factor is if the Vikings are able to protect their quarterback. Their O-line has not looked all that great this year, and like I said, the Steelers finally seem to be waking up a little bit when it comes to that front seven. TJ Watt could have an absolutely insane game here. He's been relatively quiet so far this season. This could be his game where he takes over. I think that Rodgers is overdue for an international win, and he gets it here against a Vikings team that people may be overrating a little bit just because of their win against Cincinnati. Anyway, on to the 1 p.m. games, starting with the Washington Commanders versus the Atlanta Falcons. The Falcons, yeah, they showed us they definitely have a long ways to go before they develop into the team that people are hoping they'll be. That Michael Penix still has a long way to go before he is a true proper starting quarterback. He's looked good in some games, but this Panthers matchup, he was absolutely awful, and to me that is nothing short of disgraceful. because it's the Panthers. You got blown out and shut out by the Panthers defense, which is supposed to be one of the worst in the league. And now you're telling me that you're going to go out there and play a lot better against the Commanders and try and get a W against them? I just don't see it happening. Jaden Daniels, I'd hope that he'll be back for this matchup, but even if he isn't, we've seen that Marcus Mariota is more than capable of making some stuff happen with this offense as a veteran. He went in there against the Raiders and he played well. He was a game manager. He made the big plays when he needed to. I think whether it's Jaden Daniels or him, that the Commanders are walking away with a victory here. The Falcons are way too inconsistent to rely on in these big matchups, and at the end of the day, the Commanders have been pretty solid against the run, and that is the Falcons' bread and butter. The expectation, at least for me, is that Bijan maybe won't have the great game that we've seen him have a couple of other times so far this year. They'll be able to contain him. It'll be on Michael Penix to win this game, and he'll just get outplayed by a better Washington offense, and that'll be that. To quickly get through the next one, the Saints are going over to Buffalo to take on the Bills. We know what's going to happen here. This is Bills by manslaughter, by whatever the hell they want. There's not much to discuss here. The Saints finally looked how you'd expect them to coming into this season, getting absolutely destroyed by Seattle, being unable to move the football, and being unable to get a stop. And against a Bills team that's a Super Bowl contender, you should be able to increase the likelihood of that happening tenfold. Maybe the Saints offense will be able to score some more points and potentially cover this crazy spread, but definitely don't get your hopes up. They're way too all over the place to expect anything less than a blowout. So Buffalo win by manslaughter, and that's it. Speaking of potential manslaughter, the Detroit Lions are taking on the Cleveland Browns. Both sides coming off of a major victory here. The Lions upset, if you even want to call it an upset, some people won't, but they were able to get a big win over the Baltimore Ravens in a game that a lot of people, including myself, were counting them out of. The offense seemed to come way back to life for the second week in a row. They're back and better than ever after a rough start to the season against the Packers, while the Browns were able to upset the Packers in one of the most wild sequences I've seen in a very long time. That Browns defense is legit, man. They played so great this year. 2 out of 3 games, they kept it super low scoring. I'm very impressed with how stingy that unit has looked. But unfortunately, they are playing the Lions. Eventually, they are going to bend and or break. You know that the floodgates will open. Maybe they contain them early on, but you know the Lions offense is going to be on the field primarily. You can't count on Joe Flacco to be consistent. He's been pretty bad this year so far, so the Lions are going to eventually run away with this game. You know, maybe it's a 1-2 possession game at halftime, but after that, the Lions probably run away with this and they win by like 20-something points. I'm not expecting the Browns to go out there and have a defensive masterclass again like we saw against Green Bay. That's just too much to expect out of a team that's supposed to be rebuilding, so we got the Lions. Now for a tougher matchup, the Carolina Panthers versus the New England Patriots. The Panthers, they finally got on the W column with a massive blowout victory against one of their rivals in Atlanta. That was a big moment for them. They were able to continue the momentum after a really good second half against the Arizona Cardinals. I'm happy with the progression that this team is showing. I thought they were out, but maybe I counted them out too soon. And now they're playing a Pats team who's coming off a game that they just should not have lost. I mean, an L's an L, but damn, the way they turned the ball over and over again in that Pittsburgh game was insane. They should have won that game like 4 times over if they didn't have fumbleitis, but it is what it is. They're playing, at least in my opinion, a more winnable matchup here against Carolina, and I actually do have the Patriots coming out on top on this one, but it is a tough game to call, and I'm not that confident in my pick. You know, I figure the Pats are at home and their defense has been relatively solid. They've been containing some teams for sure. That pass rush is going to get to Bryce Young. Maybe he'll make some mistakes late in the game and the Patriots will be able to capitalize. I just don't see them having another dud game like last week. They're going to come out motivated. Mike Vrabel's a good coach. I'm expecting that the execution will be a lot better. Maybe we'll see Travion Henderson get a lot more carries to avoid that fumbleitis, and the Pats squeak out a tough one here. It could be a bit of a shootout, but I trust the Patriots more to get a stop in this one. I like what they're doing. I think they're on the right track. They're figuring things out, and this is a good way for them to get back in the W column. Next up, the Chargers are taking on the Giants. Usually we'd pay no attention to this one, but the Giants have decided to bring us right back in by starting Jaxson Dart. Russell Wilson has already been benched after 3 games because he has been that bad. Now, personally, as a fan of this team, I'm a little worried because it reminds me a lot, actually, of when Daniel Jones got his first start back in the day. But hopefully this time can be different, you know? Jaxson Dart, if he can just go out there and show us something, that'll be enough. Obviously, the Chargers are going to win this game. I mean, this is this kid's first ever start in an NFL regular season game, and he's playing one of the best teams in the league. The Chargers are red hot right now, and they should be able to pass the ball well against a weak Giants secondary. But man, I'm excited to watch Jaxson go out there and hopefully breathe some life into this Giants offense. It can't possibly be worse than what we've seen with Russell Wilson outside of the Dallas game. And you know, if his personality and his play can inspire the team a little, that'll be enough of a W for me, because as far as I'm concerned, it looks like a lot of the players have already quit on this team. So hopefully Jaxson can bring us all back a little bit here. Then you have what I think is one of the most anticipated matchups of the week. The Tampa Bay Buccaneers versus the Philadelphia Eagles. 2 3-0 teams going head-to-head. And in recent memory, the Bucs have had Philly's number. They blew them out in the 23 playoffs. They blew them out in the 24 regular season last year. Baker and the Bucs just seem to know the Eagles so well, and that's really scary for this Philly team, who honestly got pretty lucky in their matchup with the Rams last week. I mean, when the hell do you see 2 field goals get blocked in one game? That's just insanely lucky. They should have lost that game against the Rams. A loss is definitely coming, and it could very well happen against Tampa Bay here. Tampa just match up well against Philly. They know how to contain the run. They know how to get under Jalen Hurts' skin. And, you know, I am very nervous about Tampa heading into this one because they do have some key injuries. Mike Evans, his status is up in the air. Maybe they get Chris Godwin back, but Egbuka, you know, he's dealing with injuries as well. Tristan Wirfs and his situation. The Bucs are banged up, and I think every fiber of my being should be telling me to go with the Eagles to win this game because of that. But I'm a Philly hater, and I love Tampa Bay and how clutch they've been this season, so screw it. We're going with the upset. I'm picking the Tampa Bay Buccaneers in my upset of the week. Philly can't keep on squeaking by. They usually have a rough loss early in the season before dominating, and it could happen right here. Maybe they don't get blown out against Tampa like the last 2 times, but I think Tampa are going to will their way to a victory here. The Eagles should be more dominant than what we've seen because of the level of talent on their roster. Tampa, it makes more sense for them to continue squeaking by because they're a bit more of a scrappy team that don't have the same level of roster as Philly. But Tampa will their way to wins because they have the absolute legend of Baker Mayfield. He may be having an MVP season before our very eyes with all the clutch game-winning drives that he's leading, and I think he's going to do it against Philly here as well. The Eagles, maybe they take a score late in the game to take the lead, but then Baker, in typical Baker fashion, is going to do it again. It feels like that type of year for Tampa. Philly are overdue for a loss. The stars are aligning, even though it's scary with the Tampa injuries. Give me the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Now we're on to an AFC South divisional matchup between the Titans and the Texans. This shouldn't be a close game, but it feels like it's going to be. The Texans, I mean, they've been really, really bad. You could argue they could be 3-0 if they didn't feel so dysfunctional offensively, if CJ Stroud didn't make these weird mistakes, if the offensive line could actually block. It is a big problem out there in Houston. They are completely and utterly broken on that side of the football, and that's a shame because their defense has looked elite so far. I mean, really good. Easily like top 10 in the league so far. Some might even say top 5. But it hasn't mattered because the offense has been completely and utterly broken, and there's a chance that will continue against the Titans here. This should be a cakewalk for them, but we can't sit here and say it will because of how bad they have looked. The Titans, they have nothing to lose. There's no pressure on them. It's all on the Texans because they've started 0-3 when they're supposed to be winning this division. It's another must-win game, while the Titans, with their future franchise quarterback here, are just trying to figure some things out and are hungry to get on the board with a W. There's a real world where the Titans come out on top here. Their defense has not been that bad, and against the Texans, they should be able to have their way. But I'm a bit too much of a coward to go through with the Tennessee victory here, just because they are still developing on the offensive side of things. Houston's D is way better than Tennessee's, and I don't expect Cam Ward to capitalize because he still is developing. That offensive line is not great. Houston should be able to have a field day, and I believe they'll hold on to win a close game. It'll probably be like 12-10 or something stupid like that. I'm expecting an ugly game here, but Houston are the better football team, and they'll squeak out an ugly W here. And as we head into the 4 p.m. matches now, the first one is pretty darn interesting. The Colts, the undefeated Colts, mind you, are taking on the LA Rams. This could be the Colts' true first test in terms of showing if they're legitimate or not. The Rams are a really solid team. They blew a lead that they probably shouldn't have against Philly. They could be undefeated right now. That is a tough team right there, and we're going to see what Daniel Jones is really made of or not here. He has looked like, I can't believe I'm saying this, but an MVP candidate in the early portion of this season. He's been making some great throws. Jonathan Taylor has been RB1 so far. That Colts offense is a well-oiled machine. And ultimately, the thing that it comes down to is whether or not the Colts can establish the run in this game. So far, Jonathan Taylor has been absurdly dominant, but the Rams' run defense has been one of the best in the league, at least in my opinion. They have shut down all 3 opponents so far in terms of the run. Everyone's had to kill them with the pass. I mean, even Saquon couldn't do much of anything, and we know how dangerous he is behind that Philly O-line. This is a very difficult game to call. I never thought it would be in a million years, but the Colts really are a respectable team, and you got to give them credit. But I will not be giving them enough credit to win this game against the Rams. I think the Rams are going to win the battle of attrition up front. Jonathan Taylor will have a bit more of a quiet game, and it'll be on Daniel Jones to win this one, but Matt Stafford's going to outduel him after being pissed off losing that game against Philly. This Rams team is legit. They've showed us as much these last few years, and I think they're going to do enough to beat this Colts team and send them back down to earth a little. Next, you have another interesting game between the Jags and the 49ers. Honestly, I don't think the Jags are all that great. I mean, they've been in every game they've played. They probably should be undefeated right now, but I don't know. When I've watched them play, I've been left wanting more. Trevor Lawrence has been like okay, but he hasn't been as good as I'd hope with this type of offense. Everything's just felt off, but they've been squeaking by. They've been making some big turnovers happen against opposing teams to put them in these situations, but I'm not getting my hopes up against the 49ers. They honestly might lose, whether it's Mac Jones or Brock Purdy. I think just for the sake of having another road team win, I'd pick the Jags if Mac Jones is playing, because didn't love what I saw against Arizona. But if Brock Purdy comes back, which seems very possible right now, I'm going to go with San Fran instead. I expect that he'll be able to do enough to win that game if he's healthy. He's looked pretty okay so far this season. Him and CMC should be able to have a field day if they can get it going early, so it really does depend here. Next, you've got the Ravens versus the Chiefs, potentially game of the week on the line here. Man, oh man, Baltimore, you blew it again. Another game that they should have won potentially, or had the chance to late in the game, ends up getting ruined by a Derrick Henry fumble. What in the hell is going on over there, man? They've been in both games, against Buffalo and against Detroit, but as usual, they just find ways to lose. I thought after losing to Buffalo in week 1 that it was over with, they'd be done with the choking, but no, I was wrong. It's still there and very prevalent, and the defense isn't getting it going as much as I'd like to see them with the level of talent they have. It's just been a weird year for Baltimore. Their offense has looked really, really good, but these weird mistakes at the worst times just keep on costing them. And against a voodoo magic team like the Chiefs, that's a little bit scary, I'm not going to lie to you. Mahomes and the Chiefs, they've had Lamar's number over and over again. Not a great track record here, and you might be inclined to pick Kansas City, but I think I'm going to go with Baltimore to get back on the board here and get a W. It feels weird seeing the Chiefs potentially drop to 1-3, but even against the Giants, I just wasn't impressed. Maybe they get Xavier Worthy back, and that could help, but generally, they just lack the explosiveness that Baltimore does. They can break off a long run or a big pass to Zay Flowers at any moment, and the Chiefs have just been really inconsistent in that regard. Sometimes Mahomes is hitting these bombs, but other times he's missing wide open players. He hasn't looked quite like himself. He made some really stupid mistakes in that Giants game, but he's lucky because, he was playing the Giants, so they couldn't do anything about it. But against Baltimore, a competent team that's supposed to be contending for a Super Bowl, he's not going to be able to get away with that. And again, I just see more of that happening again. If they had played a real team instead of the Giants on Sunday night, they would be 0-3 right now. It really is that simple. I think against any type of competent team, until shown otherwise, you should be expecting the Chiefs to struggle and or lose. Baltimore don't have the track record, but they certainly have the team, so I'm going to pick Baltimore. I'm going to hope that they don't bite me this one last time. Otherwise, I'm probably absolutely done picking them against any sort of relevant team. So please, Baltimore, don't let me down. You are the better team. Get this W, please. And in the final 4 p.m. slate, the Bears are taking on the Raiders. Shout out to Chicago, man. They're finally starting to piece things together a little bit. They look like more of a capable offense after a rough first week against the Vikings. Even against Detroit, not that bad despite it being a rough loss. And against Dallas, they were able to develop it even further, dropping 31 points and beating Dallas very convincingly. Now, of course, Dallas's defense might just be number 32 in the league after what we saw against the Bears and the Giants, but still, the Bears were able to execute, and I think that is worth praising. It seems like they're buying into Ben Johnson's system. They're establishing the run. They're doing trick plays. Rome Odunze looks really good in his second season. I like where the offense is at, and I think there's reason after building some confidence against Dallas to continue that against a Raiders defense that is anything but solid. This Raiders team just feels so bleh right now. The defense can't make stops. Geno doesn't look like himself. They can't establish the run with Genty. They can't do anything right now. A lot of growing pains, and they're very fortunate to even have a W on the board right now. The Bears, to me, from top to bottom, are just a better team. They have things more figured out. There's more explosiveness to their offense, and I trust them to get some kind of stop if needed compared to the Raiders, so I'm just going with the Bears. They're in a much better spot right now, even if they both are 1 or 2. Chicago, they're going to win a second in a row here. On to Sunday Night Football, and oh boy, we've got a big one here. Packers versus Cowboys. Micah's return to AT&T Stadium after the trade. This is going to be absolute cinema, ladies and gentlemen. I cannot wait for this. This is a salty matchup if I've ever seen one. Cowboys fans are going to be sweating, watching themselves play against the Packers, who they usually don't do well against, and now Micah's over there. Micah probably wants to stick it to Jerry Jones for being an absolute idiot. This is going to be a glorious game. As a Giants fan, I'm very hopeful that the Cowboys will end up suffering in this one, and I think there's reason to believe that they do end up losing, even if they are at home. Their defense really can't make any stops, and it's hard to believe the Packers' offense is going to be that stagnant for a second week in a row. Cleveland's defense, I mean, I think that was just a bit of an anomaly. They'll come back to life, and they should be able to shred apart that Dallas secondary. They're going to go deep to their playmakers. I think Matt Golden might have a really good game for himself here, and the Packers should be able to do whatever they want. And that's on top of the fact that I'm expecting their defense to continue to be solid. They haven't had a bad game yet. And against Dak and that old line, I mean, come on. Micah's going to have his revenge. He's going to go off in this game. He wants to stick it to Jerry Jones, and he's going to be laughing all the way when the Packers win this game with relative ease. And now we're on to Monday Night Football, where, again, for some reason, we're going with this doubleheader thing, and the matchups don't even look too good. You've got the Jets versus Dolphins in slate 1, and Bengals versus Broncos in the other slate. I mean, Dolphins and Jets, both 0-3. Both of them feel like their seasons are already lost. They both showed some fight after a bad start there in week 3. Dolphins, they kept it close against Buffalo, while Jets almost pulled off a crazy comeback against Tampa. Maybe both are starting to establish some momentum. I don't know if Justin Fields will be back or not for this game, whether it's him or Tyrod, it's hard to say. But, man, this is a weird one. It's a 50-50 ball. Both teams suck, and when that happens, you probably get a shit show. But, just thinking about who's playing in this game, it's obvious who's more likely to continue suffering, and that's the Jets. They find very unique ways to lose and make their fans suffer. We've seen it time after time. Them and the Giants have been the laughingstocks of the league, and they haven't done too great against the Dolphins recently. So I'm going to go with Miami to win this one. Their offense is finally starting to wake up. Tua still hasn't looked perfect, but it seems like they're starting to regain that form a little bit. They're able to establish the run. They're throwing some bombs to Jalen Waddle and Tyreek Hill finally, and I think against the Jets, who are so much less competent than Buffalo, we'll see more of that. This might actually end up being a really good game that's a shootout. Maybe for all the wrong reasons, I'm not so sure, but I think it is going to be close. But Miami, to me, are the better team. Not that it's saying much, and I think they're going to get the win. I expect Tua to do enough to beat the crappy Jets, as he's done so many times before. And then finally, Bengals versus Broncos. Not expecting this to be a good match. I'm hoping that Jake Browning returns to form and looks more like the guy we saw from a couple of years ago where he's just throwing bombs and making plays happen, but I'm not going to get my hopes up. He looked really, really bad against the Vikings, and now he's playing a Denver defense, which is equally as dangerous with one of the best secondaries in the entire league. Browning has been turning the ball over left and right, and that's going to happen against Denver as well, and you'd expect them to capitalize on those opportunities. The offense of Denver has been pretty inconsistent so far, but they're playing a Swiss cheese defense over in Cincy, so Bo Nix will be able to take a couple of shots downfield, and that should be all it takes just because the Bengals offense won't be able to stay out of their own way. They still are dangerous because they have a lot of weapons, but Jake Browning is going to have some arm punts and some bad decisions, and Denver as a pretty good team will be able to capitalize. And that's going to do it for my Week 4 predictions. Let me know what you think and what your preds are and some of your best bets down in the comment section. I'd love to hear them. And of course, if you enjoyed this video, make sure to give it a like and subscribe for more NFL content every single week. Peace.